Okay, I'm here from Fuel Poverty Action, and we were asked to talk about the connection between biofuel subsidies and fuel poverty in this country. But I want to start first with just a little information about fuel poverty and what causes it. Every year, about 7,000 people in this country die from not being able to heat their homes. That's just the deaths. You have to add in then hundreds of thousands who are affected in other ways, living a miserable life through the winter because you can't do much when you're freezing cold, you're stuck in one room, your kids can't do the homework, and old people get iller and everybody's health suffers from it. I want to list 3 causes of this disaster. The first is the cuts to benefits and wages. Lots of people are losing their benefits or losing their wages, and even the ones who don't find that any increase you get in no way keeps up with inflation. In fact, benefits are being artificially pegged to 1%, which is about 1/3 the rise in inflation, and of course the cost of fuel is going up much faster. The second one is housing. Our houses are not insulated. In Scandinavia, people do not die from cold homes, and that's not because it's warmer weather there. You've probably heard about the Green Deal that's supposed to be stopping the emission of heat from our homes, just like biomass is supposed to be stopping the emission of carbon from power stations. Both of those are doing nothing of the kind. Both are a lie, and in fact, because they're very profitable, you could say they're both a scam. The third reason is the price of fuel. For average households, bills went up nearly £100 last year, and we're now being told that we can expect about £200 in the next year or year and a half, in addition to the more than 1,000 that the average household is already spending on their fuel bills. I wanted to talk about a critical propaganda war, which this demonstration is very much part of. The rising price of fuel is being blamed on the need to stop climate change. It's posed as a dilemma. If you don't pay what you can't afford, then we'll all fry. Of all dilemmas, this could be the world's most tragic. The good news is that dilemma is a lie. Within a very few years, bills would actually be much cheaper if investment were moved to renewables instead of the energy sources they're investing in now. In fact, 60% of the massive increase in bills in recent years has been caused by the rising cost of gas. And that's without even counting the massive hidden fossil fuel subsidies. You know, biofuel subsidies at least are out in the open. Fossil fuel subsidies are hidden in the form of loan guarantees and all sorts of financial mechanisms, and in the form of the oil wars, which are in fact a massive subsidy in life as well as money to the fossil fuel industry. So that's the good news. But the bad news is that that dilemma is basically the way it's being posed. For instance, in the energy bill, the government says that the industry is being forced to spend extra to save the climate, which they wouldn't otherwise want to do, would they? So the consumer has to pay, because of course it couldn't come out of the industry's profits, could it? So you don't want to truck with all that green nonsense, do you? Because it's going to put your bills up. And you get these huge headlines: fuel bills soar to pay for green energy, and that kind of thing. When you look a bit closer, that lie gets even nastier. Say you're talking to a group of people who are worried about their energy bill or furious about their energy bill, and you say 60% is the rising cost of gas and only 10% of the increase in the last few years is down to what they call green measures. And somebody in the back of the room mutters, well, that 10% is still a lot and I still can't afford it. And they have a point. But the fact is that that 10% isn't really green energy at all. A lot of it's nuclear and a lot of it's biofuels. So we're having to peel back layer after layer of lies. The first one, that the real cause of the rise, the increase, is the 10%. And the second lie is that the 10% is even green to begin with. What the big six companies refuse to invest in is genuine renewables. They feel they have to keep burning something and avoid doing anything like wind or waves or solar power that might come under community control and threaten their investments. I just wanted to give a bit of an update on where people are at in this propaganda war, because Fuel Poverty Action have been working with organizations of people most affected by high prices. Pensioners, people with disabilities, single mothers on welfare, asylum seekers who live on nothing at all, basically. And everybody is up at arms about the price of fuel. But when it comes to renewables, some people are not so sure. If you go out to speak to pensioners groups, you do hear people saying, climate change is a scam they've invented to make us pay more. We can't afford the luxury of renewables. There's all these bloody environmentalists pushing our bills up and ruining the countryside. We do hear that, and we have to engage with it. This is the information that people get from the tabloids, and it is influential. But the thing is that when you push, people know something else as well. Because everybody knows that the bottom line is profit. Everybody knows that while we're freezing in our homes, the 1% are raking in billions. And Occupy made a big difference with that, with popularizing the idea of the 1%. And when the companies say they're forced to put their prices up, even the headlines say that their profits are soaring, that British gas profits are £19 a second, that in the last year British gas profits went up 10% and Scottish and Southern went up 38%, and so on. And the more scandalous it gets, the more blatant the robbery gets, the more people are dying to do something about it. And people do care, not only about their bills here, but about climate change. And not only here, but in Africa and other parts of the world. And we don't forget that in London about half the people or their families come from other parts of the world. And people care about food. I'm sorry to go on long, but I want to say a couple of things about food, because I don't have to tell you that food and fuel are intimately connected. Everybody here knows that the oil and gas used in fertilizers and pesticides and in growing food and packaging and transporting it means that agriculture, agribusiness is actually a means of converting oil into food. That's what it's been called. And people here know that biofuels are taking over land from food production in the south, which can meet starvation in countries of the global south, in the poorest countries. But there's hunger in this country too. You may have heard about the food banks that are replacing what used to be welfare. But you may not know that people with full-time jobs are now taking in food parcels so that they can save the money that they would have spent on food and put it in the electric meter. That's what's happening in this country. And you've heard about the choice between heating and eating. Now that's bad enough. But in fact, lots of people can't afford to do either. And that's when you're really in trouble. That's when, if you're old, hypothermia sets in. And one of the mothers in Single Mother Self-Defense said, after all, food is fuel. And I think that's a profound truth, because it's fuel for our own bodies. It's what you need to keep going, especially when it's cold. You need that energy even to keep shivering. And the fact is that people cannot pay our fuel bills, and more people are seeing these bills just as a con which the biofuels are part of, a con and a rip-off which they can't afford even if they want to. What we're working towards is can't pay, won't pay, like we did with the poll tax. We know it's going to take some time and a lot of hard organizing to get to the point where we can defend each other when we don't pay. And to use that to get some control of our bills and control of our sources of energy. Fighting against power stations burning biomass is part of that process, part of building that movement. We really hope we can win against Drax. Thank you.